Do you remember the first time you failed? How old were you? What was it like? Did anyone help you get back up? Or maybe you're still too young to fail. You haven't had your first big setback yet. Well, everyone fails. I've failed more times than I can remember, but those failures made me who I am today. They turned me into the man I am today. When I was just a boy, there was nothing but war and famine. My father would come home from the fields with empty baskets, and my mother would tell us stories to keep our spirits up. One day this will all be over and you will see the sun rise over a better world, she said. I knew she was right. We could feel it in the air. But when I was 9 years old, the invaders came to our village. I watched them burn our houses and saw my friends die. I hid in a ditch for 2 weeks, surviving on berries and rainwater until I was sure the danger had passed. When actually emerged, I found my parents lying dead in their barn, victims of the very same bandits that destroyed our village. So I ran away from there and wandered the countryside, sleeping under bridges and begging for food. At age 13, I was taken in by a traveling group of entertainers. I learned to juggle, to ride a horse and shoot a bow and arrow. But after 3 years, I was still only a raggedy urchin. And when I was 16, my adopted father kicked me out because I wasn't earning my keep. So I returned to the wasteland my village had become and started scavenging among the ruins. That's when I discovered a trove of tools buried in a cellar. With these, I built my first wooden machine. It was a simple device powered by a crank that could sort stones by size. The next year, I used what I earned to buy a plot of land on the edge of town and a water wheel from a traveling merchant. Now I had enough to eat and a place to sleep. I built machines for the other villagers. I built a cider press, a flour mill and a brick-making machine. And as the years passed, I married and had children and we lived in peace. Then the king decided he wanted a palace, and though I was just a simple builder, he hired me to design it. You have the reputation of being the best builder in the land, he told me. We want you to design us a palace fit for a king. He showed me the plans. The palace was going to be huge, the likes of which had never been seen before. There were fountains and statues and gardens, even a domed roof with gold leafing. And the entire structure was to be surrounded by high walls. This is madness, I told him. You need an army to protect this place, not a palace. The king threw back his head and laughed. That's why you'll be paid so handsomely, my friend. To build us a palace, we must show our enemies that they cannot defeat us. We will build it and they will see that they cannot conquer such a magnificent people. And so I set to work. First I cut down trees and laid the foundations. Then I built the outer wall, 20 feet high and 3 feet thick. I made turrets every 50 feet and connected them with walkways. As the wall neared completion, I designed the portcullis, a massive gate that would slide up and down between the stonework. It consisted of 2 leaves, each weighing several tons, that could be raised or lowered with ease. Then I built the moat, filled it with water and planted trees along its banks. All the while, the royal architect hovered over me, inspecting my work and occasionally offering suggestions. But as the months dragged on, I noticed that my payment was often delayed. Sometimes I went without food for days, but I pushed myself harder and harder, hoping to finish soon and collect my reward. But as winter approached, I began to despair. The king had changed his mind about the dome. Now it was to be copper instead of gold. And as for the statues and fountains, well, we'd worry about those later. For now, I had to finish the walls. And one night, while I was working by lantern light, the royal architect came upon me and demanded to know why I hadn't finished. It's not my fault, I said, Your Majesty. I'm working as fast as I can. This wall is huge. It will take many more months to finish. He stared at me for a moment. I don't care if it takes another year. You will finish it by Christmas, or you will leave this city without your head. Then he stalked off, leaving me shaking in the cold night air. Despair threatened to engulf me. I thought about quitting, but then I thought of my family, how hungry they were. I thought of the other villagers who depended on me to finish the wall, how they'd be able to plant crops once the wall was done, how safe they'd be within its protection. No, I couldn't quit, not now. So I recruited every able-bodied man in the village and worked them in shifts. Under the cover of darkness, we hauled stones and laid them one by one. A few weeks later, the royal architect came by again, his face pale with worry. Hasn't finished by Christmas, he muttered. The king will have my head. But then he stopped, his eyes widening. "You've almost finished," he stammered. "Are you sure it's strong enough?" "Stronger than you think," I replied with a wink. And on Christmas morning, as the sun rose over the distant hills, I stood on the last stone and slid the portcullis up and down for the royal architect and the king. They were impressed. I was exhausted. We celebrated with cider and roasted boar. And as I ate, I looked up at the wall and felt a surge of pride. It was the strongest in the land. But the next morning, I awoke to find the royal architect standing over me. "The king has gone mad," he said, his voice trembling. "He believes someone has bewitched him. Last night, he ordered the drawbridge raised and the portcullis locked, trapping 5,000 of our best citizens inside the wall. Now he refuses to let them out, even though most of them have wives and children outside. He says the wall is a prison, that we must suffer within it, as he has suffered in exile." I jumped up. "Don't worry," I said, grabbing the royal architect's arm. "We'll bring him around." I raced to the center of town, climbed atop a statue and addressed the crowd. "My friends," I shouted, "let me show you something." I ran to the wall and placed a bucket of water at its base. Then I stepped back and watched as the water flowed through a hidden channel beneath the wall and caused a wheel to turn. "I have rigged this wall with a water-powered engine," I called out. "If the king keeps the drawbridge raised, the engine will drain the moat. If he keeps the portcullis closed, the engine will stop working." The crowd cheered and I raced back to the square. "Now," I bellowed, "we must make the king an offer he can't refuse." I led the townspeople back to the wall and we sat down to wait. Soon, the king appeared in the top of the wall, his face grim. "Elias," he shouted, "why are you defying me?" "I'm not defying you, Your Majesty," I called back. "I am merely pointing out that a king needs his people more than his people need a king. If you won't let us out, we will be forced to leave this city. And then who will pay for your palace? Who will defend you from your enemies? Who will serve as your soldiers, or man your farms, or staff your shops? Who will be left to pay your taxes, or serve in your court?" The king frowned and looked out at the cheering crowd. Finally, he dropped his gaze and muttered, "Very well, open the gates." And as the crowd surged through the opening and headed for their homes, I walked along the top of the wall, my arms resting on its battlements, gazing out at the countryside. I looked back at the city and smiled. Maybe someday it would be covered in statues and fountains, maybe even a golden dome. But for now, it was alive. And that was all that mattered. The sun dipped below the hills and I turned to go home. The wind tugged at my clothes and whispered through the grass. My steps echoed on the empty road. In the distance, a dog barked. I quickened my pace, eager to reach the warmth and comfort of my hearth. As I disappeared into the gathering gloom, the wind carried my words across the rooftops. A king needs his people more than his people need a king. And somehow, looking up at the darkening sky, I knew that I, Elias Storm, had become the greatest builder in the land. There's a lot more where that came from. Click here to watch another cinematic builder video.